Hello and welcome to ProMAX Sync. This is ProMAX System's newest remote video editing workflow solution. Let's jump into this demo. So I am on my MacBook. This works on Mac or PC, it does not matter. I work off of an external drive when I edit my video. So let's take a look at this drive real quick. I have my work projects here, and I have 5 folders in here. Well, 2 of these folders I want to share with my team. Now, if I'm working alone, I can do my job, right? And when I'm done, I export my final product and send it to whoever needs it, right? Simple. Well, when you're working with a team, it's more complex than that. Maybe I'm going to record some videos, do some light editing, but I need someone else to finish it up, to add some audio, put the transitions in and maybe the bumpers and all that kind of good stuff. I need help with that. How am I going to share this with my team? Well, in the past and without a remote editing workflow, you're basically going to either upload it to the cloud maybe and put it all up there. They're going to download it. If you've got the slick Dropbox sync going on, it's a little more fluid, but maybe there's some limitations you have or a cost associated with it. Or maybe you're putting it on an external drive and shipping it out to someone or driving it across town, that kind of thing. Or obviously there's the remote desktop solution where you're editing off of a machine that's in the office and they're going to then remote into that same machine. At ProMax, we want to make this a simpler process, and we believe we've done that with ProMaX Sync. So I need to share these 2 folders, ProMaX Sync demos and raw video files. Those are the elements I need for this project. So I'm going to launch ProMaX Sync. So the first time you launch it, you're going to log in. Thankfully, it saves your information. And it's going to load. It's indexing all your spaces and in your hard drives to a certain extent. It's checking your organization. There's a pop-up that's about to happen that's going to give you a couple options. I'm going to go through them real quick. The top one is going to be changing your name. There it is. So this is Jody's MacBook. That makes a lot of sense, but maybe if I want to say it to something different, I can change it right there, right? There's a device ID. This is something you're going to want to share with your team the first time you prepare to sync. Device settings. Now this is interesting. Enable auto accept of spaces. Now this seems like, hey, this makes a lot of sense. For ProMaX Sync, I actually do not recommend turning this on unless you know, hey, my external drive is large enough, it's got a ton of space, and I'm always going to be using that. I'm not going to want to put stuff anywhere else. So yeah, you can turn that on. But for most of us, that external drive isn't always connected, or maybe we have multiple drives. Maybe sometimes I save it to my desktop, sometimes external. So there's a lot of kind of questions there. If you know everything's always going to be the same, yeah, click that, select that auto location. But for the most part, I'd recommend leaving that unchecked just for ease of use. And then lastly, obviously don't show this again. If you know your settings aren't going to change, you can go ahead and check that box. All right, so here we are. We have our 2 main storage groups, a Mac SSD and our Glyph 1 terabyte. Now Mac SSD, that's my internal drive, right? You can most definitely edit off of that. A lot of video editors choose to edit off of an external drive though. So that's what we're gonna focus on. This is that same Glyph drive I showed you earlier that had 5 or so folders in it. And we dug into that work projects folder. Well, we don't see any of that. Well, why not? Well, we have not introduced that folder into the ProMaX Sync environment. Well, how do you do that? Well, hovering is kind of the answer in this in this software. And as you can see, there's this plus icon that pops up. What is that? Add new sync folder. That's what we want to do. So I'm going to click that, select location. We're already in the Glyph terabyte. Going to open up the work projects. I want to start by sharing my raw video files. My remote editor is going to need that. So we're going to start with that. Created that space. And then I'm going to do that again for the ProMaX Sync demos. Going to hit select there and OK. Now these are in the environment. What just happened is ProMaX Sync has indexed, searched these files, it cataloged everything in those files, preparing it to be synced and then continuously synced with a remote destination. So how can we add another user to this? Well, once again, you hover over this ProMaX Sync demos project space, as we call it. We got some options. There's your pause. Add device. That sounds like what we want, right? And then we have this kebab icon here. We're going to click on that. Rename space, remove space, delete space. Now, rename is pretty obvious. It's just to change the name. Removing a space is taking it out of the ProMaX Sync environment. It does not touch the media that's on that hard drive. Whereas delete space removes it from the ProMaX Sync environment and then deletes the whole folder. So that's a very destructive action. Only do that when you're done with the project, you have unsynced it with your other user, So they're not going to be affected by your deletion. And then you want to remove this project off of your hard drive to free up that space. That's when you do that. Understanding how the sync works and the simple fact that, the beauty of sync is that any changes, anything you add is replicated to everyone. Well, anything you take away is taken away from everyone as well. So know what you're doing, know how it works to protect your data. It's always good to have data living in more than one place. And a ProMAX Sync environment is not a backup, right? Yes, it's existing in two places, but because of the sync nature and how it can be destructive, it's always recommended, especially those raw files, live in multiple places in the event of accidental deletion. That said, there are contingencies in place. There is versioning happening. So if something does get deleted, we are able to go back in and retrieve those files. So all is not lost. So let's go ahead and do that. But first, I want to show you the Media Hub. We're going to be syncing with my remote editor who works on a Media Hub. We're going to sync with them. But first, I want you to see what their space looks like before we sync. So I got to launch this ProMAX client monitor. And then we're going to refresh this. That's going to log in. I'm just going to show you that this is actually happening. So logging in here. Okay, so we have these 4 folders here. That's all I need you to see. You can note the names, but know that there's only 4 right now. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on this Add Device icon, and I've got this Media Hub here. You saw the device ID earlier. When you send that to someone and they want to connect with you, they're going to do this process. They're going to add a folder, a project into the ProMAX Sync environment, and then they're going to be able to sync with you. They're going to put this device ID right in here and then hit save, and then you'll be added. You'll have to accept that sync, that device, and then once you do, you'll be able to kind of place that where you want it. We'll see that in just a second. So let's add this Media Hub. Great, successfully added. Let's do that with raw video files. Okay, now we're going to give it just a second and go back here and watch. There we go. That's already up to date. That is syncing. Now we have a total of 6 folders. Those 2 have been added. So they're automatically added to this Media Hub, added to a folder that lives on a server. This could be a full ProMAX server or just a Media Hub, a studio, what have you. But these are added. We see that syncing is now up to date. When I go back and look at my ProMAX Sync, we see all up to date. Granted, these are pretty small, right? Just over a gig there, almost a gig and a half. So these are very small. The larger the files, the longer it's going to take. We definitely recommend, this is internet based, right? So recommend having 200-300 megabit per second internet speeds is a good place to start. That's going to get you, your 200-300 gig project folders, synced in an hour or so, a couple hours, just depending on all the variables. Larger folders are going to take longer, especially if you've got slower internet, especially if you have a slower upload speed. So definitely something to be aware of, how that works and the time expectations you should have. So now everything is here. My Media Hub editor, he has everything he needs to start working. So he's just going to, he's going to want to mount this. So that's going to pop up. And then you get that another way. Oh, I'm on the sync. That's why. That's not how that works. So double clicking is going to mount it. We're going to mount this one as well. So now they're able to open up this Premiere project. It has access to the raw media. It's going to look just the same as it did because it's all in the same folder structure. So they're able to work. So something I want to show you. So like I said, this is on a Media Hub. This is my remote server. Well, let's go ahead, open up a new Finder window, and let's look at my Glyph drive. Work projects, we're just looking at both of these. So let's just open up one of these. ProMAX Sync Demo. So now you see the autosave, the Premiere. Wait, was that the right one? Sync Demos. There we go. Okay, now we see, goodness gracious, now we see the same thing happening. So what I want to show you is I'm going to do one more Finder window, and I'm going to grab a little video file and drop it into our Glyph drive. So this is on the Glyph drive. So first thing, obviously, it's going to need to ingest. So we're going to watch that happen. And once this is finished, this file watcher that I mentioned before is going to say, hey, these are not the same anymore. What's missing? What do I need? And it's going to find those smaller it breaks it down to little buckets of data, and then it's going to just grab those buckets that it's missing. So once again, this is a pretty small, it's 1.42 gig, and that is now traversing over the internet. We can actually see this happening here in the ProMAX Sync demos. Is it? It's saying it's already done. Let's look at the media. Let's see if we can. There we go. Now we're chasing it, and there it is. So it's syncing, but it's actually already there. I can launch this and watch this video if I wanted. On the same token, let's do this. Let's just rename this. Okay. Once again, it spans. I forget what the frequency is, but it spans, and it's going to say every second, every 1-2 seconds, it's going to look for changes. And as soon as it finds it, there's a little temp file that usually pops up, and then that name is going to magically change. So that'll happen in just a moment. So while we're waiting for that, now we see the syncing happening over here. Wait for it, and there it goes. So now it is fully updated. That's syncing. That is it. As we're changing things, the file watcher is looking for changes, and then it just sends those changes when it finds them. Now we are all up to date. Everyone is happy. So one other thing I want to show you, what does it look like when a sync is coming in? So this ProMAX Blogs, this is something I work with. Let me expand my window. I'm going to sync with Jody's MacBook Pro. Okay. And in just a moment, we're going to get a little ding. There it is. Media Hub wants to share. Now, if I had enable auto accept, we would not have seen that. It just would have populated in my sync page. But I'm going to click accept, and I'm going to tell it where I want it to save it. I'm going to want it to save it right in here. So I'm going to hit select, and that is accepted. Okay. So that's going to pop up in just a moment and begin to replicate. All of the data from my Media Hub is going to be replicated onto my Glyph drive through ProMAX Sync. That's it. That's the beauty of ProMAX Sync at work. Once again, larger the projects, the longer it takes. Our typical Media Hub workflow, our ProMAX Sync workflow, is someone shoots, they have their footage, they ingest it onto a machine that is syncing. By the next morning, your other editor is able to work. And any changes they make once they're editing are almost instant because they're small. It's kilobits of data that are being transferred over. So that's going to be pretty small. So that's just kind of good to know. So this is a little bit larger folder. It's going to take a little bit more time, but we see 94, that's up to date. Now this is going to take, that's up to date. And there we go. We've just done 3.4 gigabytes of data. So that's pretty cool. One other thing I want to show you is just this little profile icon. There's your name. You can click on that. This is another way to find your device ID if you need to share that with someone. And that is ProMAX Sync. Go ahead, click that 14-day free trial to get started with us today.